Hey guys, couple of recaps. My last video, when I was talking about the assignments for the newspaper article, I apparently mentioned it was one page. For the news article, it's 2 pages. Remember, I want a page and a half of your opinion. Very little about the recap of the news article itself. So it's 2 pages for the news article. I have those instructions online. I think we have that due Friday. And then your essay, which I will be downloading an essay for you to read tomorrow so that you can write your opinion on that one as well. I clearly want you to get used to, at this level, most of you probably are aware, when you write a paper, recap. Let me know that you have read something, but then move on to give me your opinion. So let's start right at it. This is one of those courses that I wish that we could have face-to-face, because clearly with things going on today, some really good discussions that we can have based on the criminal justice system. So when we talk about the criminal justice system, remember from the very beginning, and this is because it's a comprehensive course, I'm going to let you know things that I want you to know for the final. And one of those is definitely, what are the components of the criminal justice system? Well, we're going to talk about the police, that's one. We're going to talk about the courts, that's two, and corrections. Those are the three components of the criminal justice system. So always know that. Put an asterisk in your notes, because you'll be able to go back to the notes and know that's going to be on a test at some point. But we're going to start and back up before we even get to those components. I think it's important to understand that clearly there have been bad actors or people hurting people from the beginning of time, from the time that we've had records depicting how people treat one another. So when we start to look at things, and we're going to start from the perspective of, first, the term deviance. As a society gets together and they live together, there are clearly going to be deviant acts. People that do things. When I use the term deviant, it means people are doing something within our society, within our culture. We don't like it. It's making us uncomfortable. Somebody doing something deviant is making me feel a little uncomfortable, but it's not the same as being criminal. When we use the term a crime is conduct that's in violation, and we have written it down that you can't do this, and if you do it, you're going to be punished for it. So don't get confused with deviant behavior as opposed to criminal conduct. Because it really depends on where you live. Certainly things in Las Vegas, where I'm from, the way I grew up, we watch people do things in Vegas that weren't criminal. That even if you felt like, okay, that's kind of strange, don't like it, it wasn't criminal. You come across the border, you come to Utah, some of those things would then become criminal. For instance, alcohol. In Nevada, certainly alcohol is kind of expected. Everybody can have alcohol. In fact, there's no problem drinking it, going up and down the street, get it wherever you want. When you come to Utah, it becomes a criminal event. You can't walk up and down the street. So remember, when we talk about deviant behavior and criminal behavior, the country we live in, it depends on the state, and in some instances the city, the county. We have this idea in our country that we don't like big governments, and that every state and every city can decide what's best for them, even at the expense of maybe the majority. And we'll have this discussion. This discussion is going to come out in a lot of different things as we talk about things like, when is it okay to have a relationship with a minor? Is it okay to have a relationship and marry somebody when they're 16? Clearly in some states you can have a relationship with someone at 16 and you're 70. Those states say it's okay. Other states say, no, we don't want that. We're not going to do that. So again, as we have this debate, should the federal government come in and make demands and say everyone will be 18 before we allow them to have a relationship with somebody 80 and 90 years old? That's a debate we're going to have as we go through this. But keep in mind this idea of deviance and criminal behavior. And what I want you to picture right now is the statue that you see on your book. If you look at your textbook right now, you'll see this statue of Lady Justitia. No, we didn't make this up. For those of you that travel abroad, if you go into Europe, you're going to see it all over Europe. It's this persona of a woman holding a scale. And if you look at your book, in many places you'll see her blindfolded. You'll see her with a sword in her hand. Many different depictions. But what I want to bring to your attention is the scale. When you look at that scale, what does that mean when she's holding a scale? Lady Justitia is holding that for a reason. And a lot of people don't really understand what that means. What she's trying to say is that in a society, we have two opposing forces. And that scale is we're trying to make it the best we can or balance it out for everybody. In today's day and age, I've never seen anything in my life where we, as a country, we're like 50-50. Trying to say what's best for one group is going to hurt another group. So as we have debates, we can't come to many decisions that all of us agree on. So that's the struggle we have. That scale, and I want you to remember this. This is one of those things that you're going to have to remember for your final, for the next test, because it's important. On one side of the scale, we're trying to say we have a constitution. We have a constitution for a reason, because we think that people should be treated in a certain way. Those individual liberties, the things that we value, the Bill of Rights, that's one side of the scale. That people should be treated this way, and this is the most important thing. On the other side of that scale is what we call crime control. Crime control is this idea that government's supposed to protect me. That's your job. It's you as the governor, it's you as the mayor, city council, it's you as the police department. You have to protect me. So we're trying to balance this crime control protection with how far do we go, because we have a constitution. And what you'll find is, as you dig deep into this, like everything, and I want you to have this as a takeaway from this course, as we argue these points, it's much different when you've had somebody that's been affected by anything in criminal justice. If you have a family member that was shot by the police, or in George Floyd's instance, if you're a family member, your whole perception of what this topic is about is going to change overnight. If your sister, your mother is a victim of a sexual assault, it's going to change overnight. So as people argue about this side stronger than this side, remember it's all about perception. You know, most of us have never been a victim of a violent crime, and I'm glad for that. We'll talk about that. But when you become a victim of a violent crime or your family member, your ideas change. That side of crime control will maybe be more important than individual liberties. When you've had somebody that their constitutional rights have been violated by the police and been encroached upon, you're going to say, we need to go back to what our value systems are, and you're going to want that constitutional rights or individual liberties to be much stronger. So remember, I want you to always be thinking about that scale and how we're trying to balance it out as a nation. And I can tell you it's never going to be balanced. I can tell you that over history, it swings back and forth, back and forth. And you can generally put a major event for each time it swings. I mean, clearly after World War II, you know, when we come back as a nation trying to deal with all the things to rebuild our country, you know, we might have had this idea that we're going to build this value of constitutional rights. So individual liberties was way up here. We weren't worried too much about crime. But then in the 60s and the 70s, as we start to perceive this threat of civil liberties, of demonstrations for people wanting to be equal, one side of the society says that's an encroachment. You see the police power starting to get stronger and stronger, and we said, protect us, and crime control came up, individual liberties went down. But what ended up happening is we realized that people do need to be treated fairly and equally, so the police had their power taken away. And that's when individual liberties started to come back. When we see pictures of the police arresting people for no other reason than the color of their skin, We realized as a nation the cops have too much power. Individual liberties came back. But then what happened? A lot of you are way too young. As we start to go through the 60s and 70s, up into the 80s, we started to be told that this gang problem was getting big. All over LA, all over New York, gangs were going to destroy our country. So what happened was, over a period of years and into the decade, we started to see police power starting to get powerful again. Because the public came out and said, we want crime control. We're going to let you do things that we didn't normally want you to do, but take control and protect us. So the gangs kind of forced this. Until what event? Again, most of you are too young. And I implore you to pull up the video. As a nation, we watched somebody being chased down in LA. And as the police chased them down, and as a cop, I watched it too. I was on duty. I remember watching this, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But as the police in LA chased this person down, helicopter is watching, they began to beat this man with sticks over and over again. So the Rodney King beating that took place, again, that's when the public, the United States said, wait a minute, the cops have got too much power, and they took it back. Individual liberties started to come back. So as individual liberties took hold, and we started to realize that our Constitution was more important than having police powers, that went for another decade. But then what happened? As a nation, we were attacked. 9/11 was significant in what we do in criminal justice, because at that point in the United States, and rightly so, the American public were scared. We've never been scared from abroad, but now we are. So law enforcement locally began doing things after 9/11. The cops got more power. They started to take control of not just what's happening within the city, but we had to be prepared if we were going to be attacked by anybody worldwide. So we gave the cops a lot more power. Crime control started to take place again. Cops had a ton of power because we didn't want to be attacked again. We're afraid. What happened over the last few weeks? You can see we're switching back. Over the last decade, since 9/11, the cops have gotten too much power. The public have watched as George Floyd, and as we can see that clearly the policies and things that are happening right now are not fair. The injustices that we created in the criminal justice system, people are now recognizing this is not right. And now they're saying cops have too much power. So as that power is being brought down, now you're going to see the individual liberties come up. So what you're seeing is, and I hope you understand, that it's never going to be perfectly balanced. It's going to change back and forth. Yes, we expect government to protect us. Yes, we expect, when the government does that, to abide by a set of rules, our Constitution. But depending on what happens to you in your life, it's going to make you do extreme things. And through my life as a police officer and involved in multitude of government positions, I've watched as we have done things as a knee-jerk reaction, and we've thought we're trying to protect people, but in doing that, we've actually hurt a lot more people than we've protected. So you guys are lucky at this point. What I mean by that is, you're watching us change again. We're going to change. The criminal justice system is going to change. It has to. Where we have gotten to since 9/11 is not where I think we need to be. We clearly are mistreating people, and as we start to address that, you're going to see that come down. What that's going to be in the next couple of years, I don't know. We'll discuss it. I hope a lot of your essays will tell me, what do you think the police should be doing? You know, I rarely will give you my opinion, but I will tell you this. I clearly think that too much has been put on the shoulders of law enforcement. You know, law enforcement are there for a reason. I get it, for violent crimes. But should we be getting called to some of these other things? Should we be involved in a lot of things, day-to-day lives of individuals that in the past neighborhoods, church leaders, and people within the community took care of? Why are the police there? Clearly, we need to start looking at every aspect. But I want you to be very careful. It's not just the police. That's where the focus is right now in the news. We clearly have to look at the courts. We clearly have to look at corrections. There are problems in all three of these. Yes, we've got problems in police, and we're going to talk about that. But there's a lot of problems in the other two. So as we go about this debate, you're going to have people on both sides of this argument in this country. If you support the police, you're considered a crime control advocate. If you support the Constitution, then you're an individual liberty advocate. Okay, so remember, and I've never seen anything like this where we're so divided. And I wish we weren't, because there's a lot of things that we agree upon. We get so caught up in what we disagree about that we don't realize, I think most of us realize that we've gone way too long with it's been a disproportionate amount of people of color that have been arrested for things that other people don't get arrested. And so we've got to start looking at that, you know, and it is a problem. So as we start to see people out there in the streets, they're out there for a reason. And unless you've been a victim of that type of atmosphere, you're not going to understand it. I'm not going to understand it. I'm not going to try to understand it and try and explain to you what it feels like to be that person pulled over. I don't know. I was clearly the person pulling people over. I get it. But what I want you to do is at least open your mind and understand that we're trying to find the best balance we can. We all want to treat people fairly, equally, and again, at the same time, protect people. It becomes extremely important as we start to look through this. So understand the theme of the course: individual liberties, crime control, or in other words, public order, keeping the community safe. Understand the three components: the police, the courts, and of course corrections. And we're going to go over each one of these in the course. I'm not going to break down federalism. I hope most of you understand that concept from high school. But clearly in our country, we have a federal government, we have state governments, we have cities and counties. We have an enormous system in the United States out of the fear that we don't trust big government. And so that's why we have this. And we're going to be, many times in my course, I'm going to be saying this is how they do it elsewhere. And I'm not going to be that person that's going to tell you, number one, that we're doing it better than any other country, because I don't believe that. I think a lot of countries are doing things very good in criminal justice, and I wish we relied more on what they did. I think we're doing a lot of good things. We do a lot of good things, but I think we can do better in a lot of other areas. So as we start to discuss who's doing what and where, I'm going to tell you, we didn't make that up. We took that from this place. This is a good thing we're doing, or somewhere else in Germany, what they're doing with corrections. That's amazing. So we're going to approach this as, let's try and get the best system that we can, and try and protect people as we go about it. Next lecture, I'll start to break down specific words that you've heard 1,000 times, but I want you to understand what their true meaning is. And we'll do that next time. Right now, I just want you to go online. I'm going to have a link. I'm going to have a link to an old movie that's called A Few Good Men. And I'm going to have the link, and I want you to watch this colonel. And when he's on the stand, because we're going to discuss that next time. As police officers, as you watch these videos today, police officers, as they do things on the street, many of them get caught up in this feeling that they have to protect everybody. And they do things that they know they should not be doing, but they do it because they feel that they're doing it to protect everybody, that the ends justify the means. And that's something that, as you understand and you start to see these, and we'll talk about it in class, every time something happens, I look at it as, was that the way that police officer was trained? Or did they do something that they were not trained to do, and that was clearly on their own for whatever reason? And we'll discuss those. So look for articles things that have happened, and I want to see your opinions, hear your opinions. Get them to me. And again, tomorrow, Fridays, I'll be at the grind. If you have questions, other than that, I'll see you next time.